You set aside your practicality filter when you are involved in creating visions and when you are generating ideas for problem-solving activities. For example, when the commercial aircraft division of Boeing decided to build the 777 airplane, do you think they were wearing their practicality filter? They reportedly risked the existence of the entire company on the project, and they were using new processes and procedures for development that had never been used before. Had they failed, they very likely would have taken the company into bankruptcy. Some of you might be taking on the same types of challenges today. On the other hand, sometimes the best possibilities can arise out of totally impractical ideas. An electric company, power distribution company in the northwestern part of the United States was experiencing power line failure in the winter because of ice formation on the wires. Under the extra weight, the wires were breaking. The company engaged a group of engineers and line workers to generate ideas on ways to eliminate the ice from the wires. Naturally, many practical ideas surfaced. But one idea that was offered was to train bears to climb the poles and shake the wires. Now that's a practical idea, right? Someone asked how they would entice the bears to climb the poles. Food was the practical answer. But how would you get the food on top of the poles so that the weight of the bears would wiggle the wires as the bears retrieved the food? Someone suggested a helicopter could drop food parcels on top of the pole. And you probably can guess what happens next. The solution. The downdraft from the rotor blades was sufficient to break loose the ice. So instead of busy bears, they now have one helicopter that flies over the lines when ice forms. A very practical solution derived from a seemingly very impractical idea. So you see, generating ideas for visions should occur in a practicality filter-free environment. Now that we've discussed some of the fundamental challenges to generating a vision, you may ask, are there some tools or processes that will help you mitigate those challenges while generating a vision for your organization? During the next section, I would like to share a few that my colleagues and I have used. One of the approaches is presented by Kuznets and Postner. They recommend an 8-step process to enhance your capacity to envision the future. First, think about your past. Second, determine what you want. Third, write an article about how you would have made a difference. Fourth, write a short vision statement. Fifth, act on your intuition. Sixth, test your assumptions. 7, become a futurist. And 8, use mental rehearsal. Let's briefly explore each of those steps. First, think about your past. We'll start with a modified version of a process developed by Herb Shepard and Jack Hawley called the Lifeline exercise. Although originally designed for individuals, Kuznets and Postner modified it so that organizations could identify their strengths and weaknesses. So you start by taking a blank piece of paper on which you'll draw the lifeline of your organization. The lifeline should be drawn like a graph, with peaks representing high points in the organization's existence and the valleys representing the low periods. Recall back as far as you can about the organization and draw the line with its peaks and valleys up to the present. Now write a word or phrase next to each of the high points, identifying the peak experience. Do the same for the low points. Now review each high point, making a few notes expressing why this was a peak experience for the organization. Do the same for the low points. Finally, go through your notes and identify what themes or patterns are present. What strengths and weaknesses show up? What do the themes and patterns tell you about what the organization is likely to find compelling in the future? After you've done that, the second step is to determine what you want. That is, define your goals. In this step, you start by taking another blank piece of paper and exploring the question, what does our organization want to accomplish? Write the question at the top of the page and then list all of the things that you want the organization to achieve. After completing the list, return to the top and ask, why do we want to do this? And keep asking that question until you run out of reasons. Do that for each item on the list. This exercise will help you discover those few idealized ends that your organization strives for. Step 3. Write an article about how you made a difference. Begin by placing yourself in the year 2010. Your organization has just learned that it has been selected to be recognized as one of the leading organizations in the first decade of the 21st century. Write the article about how your organization made a difference to the company, to the community in which it operates, to the employees and their families. Feel free to write about your deepest wishes around those subjects. Step 4. Write a short vision statement. After reviewing your results from the first 3 steps, write a short statement that captures the essence of your ideal and unique image of your organization's future. Keep the statement to fewer than 25 words. Then attempt to capture the essence of those 25 words in a short phrase of about 5 to 9 words that you could use as a slogan. Slogans are not used as substitutes for the longer statement, but do help people remember. Step 5. Act on your intuition. Kouzes says that visions take time to shape in the mind. So instead of wrestling with writing the perfect statement, do something to act on your intuition. Check to see if you're convinced you are on the right track. Step 6. Test your assumptions. Make a list of the assumptions underlying your vision. Test your thinking. Ask a few close advisors to react to your assumptions. Also talk to people you know who have different assumptions. Step 7. Become a futurist. Spend some time studying what research groups are saying about the future. In the United States, groups like the Conference Board in New York or the World Futures Society in Washington, D.C. are good sources of information. There are probably similar groups scattered throughout Latin America. Step 8. Use mental rehearsal. Mental rehearsal, the act of mentally practicing a skill or sequence of skills or attitude using mental imagery or kinesthetic feelings. Like athletes, using visualization improves performance. By frequently visualizing your vision, you increase the chances of making it become reality. I have used these 8 steps with my own organization and with other companies since I was exposed to them in the leadership seminar conducted by Jim Kouzes in the early 1980s. It is easy and revealing for many. Another process which I have used successfully is one articulated by Peter Schultz in his work, the Leader's Handbook. As a leading author in quality-related topics, Mr. Schultz suggests that any process used to develop a shared vision must be a shared process. However, it is the role of leaders to start and lead the process by preparing the initial draft. The process is straightforward and direct. Step 1. Leaders sharing their thoughts. The process begins with the leaders individually preparing answers to the following series of questions. What do you like about what you do here? What do you like about our industry or profession? What do you like about our company when it's at its best? What legacy do you want to leave behind your personal contribution to this organization? What legacy do you think we collectively should leave behind? Step 2. Conduct a retreat to discuss the answers. The leadership group attends a retreat to discuss the answers and to formulate a series of statements describing those things that are important to us. The presentation of the ideas at the meetings takes on a special format. The guidelines for discussing the questions are: first, each leader should speak from the heart. Next, the group should address only one question at a time, having each individual speaking to that question. There is no disagreement allowed, only words of support and questions for clarification. When each leader has presented his or her ideas for the question, the group reviews the captured notes for that question, looking for common themes, and records them. Next, you formulate a statement capturing the essential thoughts or the direction setting. Step 3 in the process is circulate for review. The statements are then circulated throughout the organization with a statement of introduction of where the list came from and what its intended use. Ask the people to read them in their groups, discuss it, ask for clarification, and add anything they agree, but by consensus. Step 4, review responses and refine statements. The leaders should then convene to review the responses and agree on any modifications or additions to content. It is usually most productive to have one person write direction-setting statements. Step 5 is to circulate for second review. The draft direction-setting statements are then circulated throughout the organization for feedback and input. Again, any additions or changes should be made by consensus among the work groups. Step 6, finalize. The leaders review the responses and create the final version together as a group. Peter Schultz puts a significant emphasis on the inclusion of all employees in the process. This technique expedites the understanding and buy-in process time, culminating in a truly shared vision. During our video conference last year, I articulated another method for developing a vision. It was a process that called for the group to close their eyes and project themselves 5 years into the future and imagine themselves walking through their company's buildings. As they proceed, they are asked a series of questions about what they sense, using all of the senses. These observations are then captured and reviewed in order to capture themes and values. The themes and valued behaviors form the basis of the leader's vision. I've used this method several times this year. It's easy, and each time the experience has generated very rich material for generating core content for the group's vision. While we have the knowledge of what a vision is and some tools to develop one, the bigger task is to implement it. The difficulty is that, by definition, a vision is a desired state currently to which we do not have a connected pathway. The leader's challenge is to orchestrate the organization in the direction of the vision. A business tool that can be used to bridge the gap is the establishment of strategies through a strategic planning process. Good strategy formulation, however, uses a vision-like technique to test whether proposed and existing strategies will lead to the vision. The technique? Scenario planning. Scenario planning is a tool to explore different assumptions about the immediate future. It involves the creation of 2 or 3 plausible scenarios, the development of strategies appropriate to each, the assessment of the scenario probabilities, and the evaluation of the resulting strategies across the scenarios. First, the benefits of scenario planning are multiple, but included among them is the training ground for developing skills for vision formulation. The process of developing scenarios and using scenarios to consider new strategies and test existing ones will change mindsets, challenge assumptions, create innovative options, and legitimize new directions. The key to successful scenario planning is to have the line managers conduct the analyses. By involving the line managers, leaders have the benefit of capturing frontline thinking and further engaging them in the pursuit of the vision. Strategic vision depends on the ability of the leaders to see and to feel. Second, the imperative scenario planning is related to the view Peter Bishop described about the future. With customers, markets, and economies moving faster and faster, the ability of companies to respond will depend less and less on the strategic plan, but on the ability of line managers, in fact, on the ability of all managers to make course adjustments quickly based on their personal skill at understanding unfolding scenarios. Henry Mintzberg, in his book, The Rise and Fall of Strategic Planning, reiterates that admonition by recommending that companies must move to a strategic planning process characterized by vision and learning. More specifically, traditional strategic planning becomes too limiting for businesses today. Strategic planning must migrate to a process where the vision creates the direction, strategies create the frame in which managers can make decisions, conduct business while living worlds apart, and where, when the frame isn't robust enough, they adapt, learn, and through scenario analysis and insights, modify the frame while still moving toward the same vision. Before I conclude, I did promise to tell you the truth about whether or not I successfully climbed the pole and took the quantum leap. The answer? Yes, I did. But there is more to the story. We began by saying leaders do the right thing, and creating a shared vision is one of the most fundamental roles of a leader. The greatest challenge for a leader is to manage his or her own barriers to creating great visions for the organization. The processes used to develop visions, as we saw, are rather straightforward, but it is work, hard work. Today, more than ever, if we want to retain our competitive edge, We must create environments where all our people are equipped with the tools to envision, where our frontline people understand that living the vision is more powerful than executing the plan, where our frontline people are moving. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "The greatest thing in this world is not so much where we are, but in which direction we are moving." And as Peter Bishop reminded us in the first module of this program, we best be moving. The future will soon be in the hands of the masters of speed, flexibility, and interactivity.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffmann. Let us begin the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call, and that those questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone numbers or fax which now appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first call is from Spain. It is from la Universidad de Alicante, San Vicente, Alicante, España.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. I am Professor Rivas from the University of Alicante, and I am the Director of RIF for Future Studies in the Department of Future Studies. And I have a question for Dr. Bishop. I would love to know a little bit about your opinion and your vision about the role that the educational networks on the Internet can or must have, the role they must play in the building of the future, the University of the Futures, what is some people are calling the global university, the 21st century campus.
Well, Professor, that's a terrific question because, in fact, I have a very clear vision of that. The future studies is not, as you well know, a very well-distributed discipline at this point, and yet we've been creating many disciplines from around the world. The futures discipline I consider to be the other side of the discipline of history, the study of the past. And as you and I do, and as a few others do, we believe that we should be studying, learning, and practicing our visioning and our planning about and forecasting about the future from a very early age. In fact, in the 21st century, my vision is that the futures discipline become as common and as well accepted as our study of the past. And the way we may do that is that this may be the first discipline that is created in an Internet, cyberspace-based educational system, as opposed to the ones that have been created in this century using the bricks and mortar type of educational system. So my vision is that in 100 years that people will be studying the future as much as they study the past.
Thank you. Our next call is from Mexico. It is from La Universidad Tecnológica de Nezahualcóyotl in the city of Nezahualcóyotl in the state of Mexico, Mexico.
Good morning. The question is the following. If we have a strategic and technological development in order to have a response for our clients, how can we create amongst the managers an intuitional approach so that our enterprises really can become leaders for the future?
Dr. Hoffmann?
That one might be best given to Roger. However, as I think about the role that leaders and managers have in creating and taking advantage of the intuition and the thinking of their employees, is that you really need to engage in conversations with them and explore, without your practicality filters on, explore ideas that they have that you can take advantage of, so that as you create more information, it allows your own thinking to take advantage of and intuit in many ways solutions or ideas or futures that you can't in and of yourself take advantage of. So it is really the involvement through conversation to allow you to move to places that you haven't been.
Dr. Frantz, would you add anything to that?
Just to remind everyone that we use less than 3% of our brain, and intuition is the specialized function of the right hemisphere of the brain, and so there's just so much room for creativity and solutions to problems that we can't even imagine right now.
Thank you. Our next question is from Paraguay. It is from La Universidad Americana in Asunción, Paraguay.
Buenos días. My name is Bernardo Cruz, and my question is, what changes must take place at the university level in order to form leaders who have visioning and not just mere technical people that deal with paperwork and administration, but real leaders in visioning?
Dr. Bishop, what do you say?
Well, sir, this is a marvelous question of which we could take up the whole rest of the hour, so let me be brief. The university, in its traditional role, is a repository of knowledge and a center of science and learning. It has not been, at least in our experience, and particularly in the United States, very much directed towards the establishment of skills, even the most important skills, such as critical thinking and leadership. If the university faculty were to practice, first of all, its own and develop its own skill at doing those things which it is imparting to its students, and that means spending more time perhaps in actual practice of their trade and their craft, as opposed to simply reading the literature and studying the journals, then they could be able to impart that skill onto the other in a type of master and apprentice role, which has been very, very clearly developed in history. Our universities, as good centers of science, and there should be such, unfortunately hold that out as the ideal rather than as the place where people can come to learn to do things rather than just come to learn to know things. And professional programs, I would hope in the future, will direct themselves then to skills such as leadership and the development of intuition.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Bolivia, from La Universidad Privada Boliviana in Cochabamba, Bolivia.
In many organizations, you frequently find obstacles to change at any hierarchical level. Could you comment on some elements that could help take the steps necessary to create cultures of change at all levels of an organization?
Dr. Hoffmann, you want to start that?
Certainly. As we think about change in organizations, many times it's not what I will call change, but actually dropping habits that we've acquired over time that we thought were helping us in a particular situation. And we've made those our assumptions or our ways of thinking and approaching things. So sometimes we have to help people understand what patterns they've adopted in their thinking and how they are translating their experiences through those filters of thinking to help them understand that they're no longer serving them well in the situation. And so some of the experiences that you can create for them are actually having conversations around this of what are the assumption sets that they bring to the table, getting those things out so that people can actually see them, and then having them in their own way think about and or articulate how they are serving or supporting what you're trying to accomplish at that point in time. But I would say that most frequently it's helping people to stop and think about what assumption sets they're using.
I think if I could comment for a moment, because we oftentimes make a mistake when we begin the discussion of change, and that is to take a negative attitude. We believe that people are not going to like it, and we almost do change at them rather than with them. Two recommendations that I make is, first of all, not to criticize the past. The past has been the way we got to where we are, gives us the resources, in fact, to change. And indeed to approach the change, secondly, as an optimistic attitude, that it will be best for not only the people whom the organization serves, but also the people who work in the organization. If in fact it is not good for the people who work in the organization, in the end, then they should resist the change. You would resist the change. And so it's a tough requirement to say, let's become more effective and more efficient, and at the same time create a better environment for work and for challenging development. But those are the requirements, I believe, of a successful change.